Now to the very latest on the historic decision from President Biden to drop out of the 2024 election.
It comes after weeks of growing pressure from within his own party to step down. In a letter to the American people, the president wrote, "I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down." The president pledged his support for Vice President Kamala Harris to run in his place. The 59-year-old is the first woman, Black American and South Asian American to hold the title of VP. Before her time serving with President Biden, she served in her home state of California as a senator and attorney general. We have live team coverage on what is next for the 2024 election that's already seen plenty of shocking twists.
Reaction pouring in this morning following President Biden's historic announcement.
And his decision to endorse Vice President Harris, who says she plans to earn and win the nomination. Our team coverage begins with CBS News' Natalie Duddridge. Natalie.
Good morning, Chris and Mary. Yes, all eyes will be on Vice President Kamala Harris as she delivers remarks at a previously scheduled NCAA event that's happening at the White House at 11:30 this morning. She has a difficult balancing act ahead between supporting the final months of Joe Biden's presidency and establishing herself with just 1 month to go before the Democratic National Convention in Chicago.
Joe Biden's political career spanned decades, and then just 4 months before the November vote, an agonizing decision. The president announcing in a statement, "Well, it has been my intention to seek re-election. I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term."
Joe Biden is grounded. He's grounded in his faith, in his family, and in our state. Excuse me.
One of Biden's closest allies, Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, said it was challenging for him to step down. His decision followed a debate performance that prompted more than 36 Democratic lawmakers to urge him to pull out of the race.
With the COVID,
Looking for a smooth transition, Biden endorsed his Vice President Kamala Harris. She posted this image on social media saying she intends to win the nomination and defeat Donald Trump.
I think this country is going to be really interested, I think really surprised at the Kamala Harris that they're going to meet over the course of the next several weeks and months.
Political heavyweights are backing Harris, including the Clintons, but others may step forward to challenge her. CBS News has learned West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, who registered as an independent, is considering going back to the Democrats to go for the nomination, but has not yet made a decision.
The next few days will be of great consequence to figure out whether or not Kamala Harris's endorsement from Joe Biden will transfer to the rest of the party.
And then there's the question, will a Trump-Harris debate happen? On Truth Social, Trump said the previously scheduled September debate should be moved to Fox News instead of ABC, raising questions about whether it may happen at all.
They're less than excited. They were ready for a landslide victory against Joe Biden. And now they're just hopeful that the Democrats push and kind of force through Kamala Harris as the nominee instead of letting an open process, because she has to defend the same policies.
The DNC says in the coming days, the party will undertake a, quote, transparent and orderly process to move forward as a united Democratic Party. Meanwhile, Democrats say small donors have already raised $46.7 million since Biden's exit. That's the largest fundraising day of the 2024 cycle. Chris and Mary.
And Natalie, this morning, voters sounding off on the changing presidential race.
CBS News' Christina Fan joins us live from Hoboken, where you've just heard from some potential voters this morning, Christina.
Well, Chris and Mary, we know that pressure has been building for weeks for President Biden to drop out of the race. But even so, his announcement on Sunday came as a major shock to a lot of voters. We spoke to a number of Biden supporters, and they tell us that they were disappointed he seemed to be forced out by members of his own party, while others who had planned to vote for him were energized by the thought of a younger candidate who would fare better against former President Donald Trump. While Biden immediately endorsed Kamala Harris, not all voters are convinced that she is the right choice. Some believe there should be an open convention to pick Biden's replacement, but others say she is the best path forward.
It was a little bit of a surprise, but I'm glad he passed the torch.
Not really surprised. I think if they wanted to have a chance, they needed to have him drop.
I wasn't surprised at all. I mean, I was surprised he got elected 4 years ago, so best luck to Kamala and whoever they pick for their candidate.
She's the VP, and she's already had the experience, and I think she's the logical choice.
and also because of all the people who voted for her in the primaries.
While many people feel anxious about the turbulent political landscape, undecided voters told us that Biden's decision to drop out opens up a world of possibilities after they expressed disappointment with their options in November. But Trump supporters who we spoke to mostly saw Biden's exit as a relief. They believe no Democratic candidate will have enough time to get together a strong enough campaign to defeat the Republicans by Election Day. Reporting live from Hoboken, New Jersey, Christina Fan, CBS 2 News.
And Christina, the president's decision not to run after one term is historic in nature. We have seen one similar situation before.
Hofstra University law professor James Sample joins us now. James, good morning. Good to see you here this morning. Can you just put into context the gravity of President Biden's decision to yield from pressure from his own party and put country above his own personal preferences? Because obviously this was probably not his first choice.
I think that's well phrased, Chris. I think that's absolutely right. I think that that's the decision that he faced, and the decision that he ultimately made was to put his own self-interest second. That is not a choice and not a pattern that we are used to seeing with political leaders. But I think that there are a couple of things that happened. I mean, number one, he saw the writing on the wall. This was a race between two candidates that for months now we've been saying, you know, there is a huge swath of America that wanted something other than the same two individuals, both relatively on in years, and President Biden, after the first debate, clearly struggling. This is a decision that says that this is about the country, that it's about a party rather than a person, and it's about patriotism and principle over personal self-interest. And I think that that narrative, particularly against Donald Trump, can be a favorable one. It can change the narrative and the energy in this race as we enter the final few months.
And James, Democratic convention coming up this year in Chicago. It was back in 1968. Another Democratic convention was held there. It was a turbulent one. What do you think is going to happen this time?
It's a good question, Marion. And to the fact that the Democrats are convening in Chicago again for the convention, you know, time is a flat circle, as they say. But I think the Democrats will learn from the experience in 1968. You know, 1968 was an incredibly divisive time in American politics, and that included the Democratic National Convention when LBJ decided not to run. But no one has ever decided, no incumbent who had the option to run again has ever decided this late in the process not to run. I think the Democrats will learn from the experience in 1968. You know, what they got out of their deeply contested and divisive contest in 1968 was Richard Nixon as president. They don't want Donald Trump to repeat the history of Richard Nixon. I think that you will see a coalescing around Kamala Harris. I think you're already seeing that happen, and I think that you will not see a repeat of the drama in 1968.
Professor Sample, thank you so much. And yes, President Biden's abrupt end to his reelection campaign reminiscent of President LBJ.
Now, in March of 1968, the country in the middle of a very divisive and punishing Vietnam War, LBJ addressed the nation from the White House.
I do not believe that I should devote an hour or a day of my time to any personal partisan causes or to any duties other than the awesome duties of this office, the presidency of your country. Accordingly, I shall not seek and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
After President Johnson dropped out, Vice President Hubert Humphrey won the Democratic nomination but lost the White House to Republican Richard Nixon, as we mentioned.
6:40 right now. One of the lingering questions this morning, what could the Democratic ticket look like? If Kamala Harris is at the top of the ticket, there is a long list of potential VP contenders, all of whom have their own presidential ambitions. The list includes Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. If chosen, she would be the first all-female presidential ticket, along with Harris. Also among possible contenders, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, California Governor Gavin Newsom, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg.
Our coverage of the president's historic decision and what comes next is just beginning. Stay with CBS 2 for every development, and for the most up-to-date information, you can go to cbsnewyork.com. There you'll find reaction from foreign leaders, Republican lawmakers, and how the squad is backing Harris.
Today, Republican vice presidential candidate Senator J.D. Vance will make his first solo campaign rally appearance on the GOP ticket. Vance heads to his hometown of Middletown, Ohio. Over the weekend, he and former President Trump made their first joint appearance in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It was Trump's first campaign stop since the assassination attempt against him in Pennsylvania more than a week ago.